Let's get one thing straight. You don't talk about Konrad Curze like he was just another of the Emperor's gilded sons. That's the first and last mistake you'll make when trying to understand the 8th Legion. He was either the only one of them honest enough to see the truth of mankind, or he was the most magnificent, tragic failure to ever draw breath. Which one you believe depends on how much blood you're willing to stomach for the sake of order. His story isn't a clean epic sung by Terran choirs. It's a scream in the dark, and you have to listen to all of it. He didn't fall to a world of tutors and sunlight. No grand palaces awaited him. No noble houses to raise him right. His cradle was a steel coffin that fire screamed its way through the perpetual chemical smog of Nostramo Quintus. A world wrapped in permanent night, lit only by the garish neon of hive sprawls and the muzzle flash of autoguns. A world drowning in its own filth, ruled by the corrupt and preyed upon by the vicious. The air itself was a toxic soup. An acid rain slicked the streets where the only law was the strength of your arm and the speed of your blade. No one found him, no kindly father figure, no mentor to teach him honor. He was alone. A child fighting things with more teeth than decency in the suffocating blackness of the underhive. Just the dark, the constant hum of failing machinery and the things that moved within it. Just predators. So he became the one they whispered about in the shadows, a myth spoken in the clicking guttural tongue of Nostraman gutter snipes. He became the Night Haunter. It started small as these things do. A few gangers known for their casual cruelty found flayed and strung up from rusted gantries, their skinless bodies a canvas of anatomical horror. Then it was corrupt arbitrators, their bodies broken in ways that mocked their specific crimes. Soon, anyone who dealt in misery learned to look over their shoulder, to fear the dripping sound in the alley, to see a phantom in every shadow. He gave the city's worst a new perch on the lampposts, their blood painting the streets in the only lesson Nostramo ever learned. He carved a bloody swath through the hive bosses and their private armies, until he stood before the spire of the Tenebor, the palace of the planet's silent, complicit rulers. He walked through its halls, leaving a trail of slaughtered nobles and enforcers, and declared himself the first and only king of Nostramo. The crime rate didn't just fall, it flatlined. A hush fell over a world that had only ever known the cacophony of violence, not from a change of heart, not from a surge of civic pride. It ended because of fear, the raw, gut-freezing, piss-your-armor terror of what the Night Haunter would do to you if you stepped out of line. That was his peace, a quiet born of horror. So when the golden giant in shining armor finally descended from the heavens, Curze wasn't surprised. Why would he be? He'd seen it coming for years, another skull-splitting flash of a future he was condemned to live. His visions weren't a gift, they were a curse. A constant migraine of the soul, feeding him images of death, betrayal, and galactic fire. The others, the noble Gilliman, the stoic Dawn, they saw visions of a golden humanity striding across the stars. Curze saw only the rot beneath the gilding. He saw his brothers turning on one another in a storm of bolt shells and fury. He saw the great lie of the Imperium burn, and he saw his own skull-faced death at the end of it all. His entire life was a debt, and the heresy was the only way to pay it. He knelt before his father, not out of awe, but out of grim resignation. The next scene of his tragedy was about to begin. He tried for a time, he truly did. He spoke with his brothers, attempting to make them understand. There's a story they tell about him and Fulgrim, the perfect preening Phoenician. Curze tried to explain his philosophy, the necessity of fear, the dark truths his visions showed him. He laid his soul bare, and Fulgrim looked at him with nothing but disgust and pity. He saw him as a broken thing to be fixed. That was the moment Curze truly understood. He was alone. They would never see. We, the 8th Legion, became his truth made manifest. Our recruits were dredged from the darkest pits of Nostramo's prisons. Murderers, psychopaths, survivors. We weren't noble aspirants fighting for a cause. We were the cause's ugly consequence. We were given power armor and a leash, and pointed at the Imperium's enemies. We weren't conquerors. We weren't liberators. We were the headsmen. Our doctrine was terror. We haunted Vox channels, broadcasting the screams of the dying to break an enemy's morale before the first shot was even fired. We made sculptures from corpses and hung flayed banners from city walls. Diego Sebastian, our first captain, Sevatar we called him, he would have laughed in your face if you called our methods chaos. Chaos is random, he'd say, a grin splitting his scarred face. What we do is efficient. Terror is a cleaner tool than a bolt gun. Frighten a world into compliance with one visceral example, and you save 1 million souls from the grinder of a protracted war. But they never thanked us for it. Gods, how they hated us. Our own brothers looked at us like filth. We were the ugly necessity, the monster they kept chained in the cellar until they needed something killed without honor. You want to understand him? Look at his confrontation with Dawn aboard the Phalanx. The Praetorian, a fortress in human form, all gold and indignant fury, called him a monster, an atrocity. He stood in the heart of imperial law and condemned the tool that kept it all from shattering. Curze didn't debate him. He didn't argue philosophy. He just broke his brother's perfect face, spitting blood and truth. The fight was a clash of wills. Dawn, the unmoving bastion, weathering the storm. Curze, a blur of feral rage, all claws and teeth and hateful desperation. He wanted to make his brother see. "You build your gilded cages, Rogel," he snarled, leaving a bloody handprint on Dawn's immaculate armor. "I'm the one who fills them." That's it. That's everything. Mankind isn't noble. It's a beast, and the only leash that holds is fear. Nostramo was the final sermon. He returned to a world that had forgotten his lessons, that had slid right back into the gutter the moment his shadow had lifted. The old rot had set in, the cycle of violence and corruption spinning anew. His great experiment had failed. This confirmed his deepest, most bitter cynicism. You can't fix what is fundamentally broken. You don't heal a rabid dog. You put it down. From the bridge of the Nightfall, he gave the order. He watched in silence as the lances of his fleet speared the planet's core. Nostramo, the world that birthed him, died in a blaze of silent fire. An object lesson on a planetary scale. When fear isn't enough, there is only extermination. And then the galaxy burned, just as he'd always known it would. Horus fell, and Curze didn't even flinch. For him, it wasn't a tragedy. It was vindication. It was the universe finally admitting he had been right all along. He didn't fight for Horus. He fought against the Imperium's lie. He used the war as his grand stage, particularly in the Thramas Crusade. He bled the Dark Angels for years, a ghost in the dark, tormenting the First Legion. He never gave the Lion a pitched battle he could win with honor and strategy. Instead, he made the entire sector his hunting ground, turning the Lion's quest for justice into a maddening, bloody slog. In the end, after the siege and the scouring, he sat on a throne of bone on a dead world called Tsagualsa, and waited for the end he'd written for himself. He dismissed his sons. He recorded his last testaments, his prophecies, his justification. He was directing his own death. He knew an assassin was coming. His visions had promised it. He let the Calidus, Mishen, slip past every one of his guards. This was an appointment. When she stood before his throne, he didn't raise a hand. He just spread his arms wide, a king greeting his executioner.
"They will say I did this to prove a point," he whispered to the killer, his voice a dry rasp. "They will be right."
He died just as he'd lived, on his own terms, making sure the whole galaxy knew they were just as savage as he was, that their justice was just a blade in the dark, same as his. Prophet, monster. He was a self-fulfilling prophecy, a man cursed to see the absolute worst in humanity, who then spent his entire life proving himself right. He saw the monster at the heart of the Imperium, and and in the end, he gave it his face. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more Warhammer lore.